Welcome to the Songwriters Across Texas podcast. This state has a lot to offer, and music is one of its greatest exports. On this podcast, we get to know songwriters through their stories and hear some of their music. Today, we're at Arlyn Studios, and my guest is Dustin Welch. I'm Karl Anderson, and this is the Songwriters Across Texas podcast. Dustin Welch was born on a cold winter solstice in a haunted plantation house in Tennessee. The firstborn son of a firstborn son, his mother was the daughter of an Indian princess and the granddaughter of one of the last living original members of the Osage Tribe. His father was Kevin Welch, a songwriter in Nashville and a darn good one. The first song he wrote was recorded by Roger Miller, the second by the Highwaymen. Everyone young Dustin knew was in the music business, and their kids were his friends. So there was one kid band after another for Dustin. He was in a band for a while with the late Justin Townes Earle called the Swindlers. Dustin had a very deep love for the tradition of music in this land. He's devised a unique style of his own, finger-styled, open-tuned, Appalachian-flavored grooves. In 2006, at a Townes Van Zandt tribute, Ken Coomer from Wilco thought he would be a good fit for a band called Scotch Greens, who were opening up for the Flogging Mollies all over the U.S. and Europe. It was a match, and he really began to come out of his shell as a player. After a year and a half of grueling touring, they disbanded, but Dustin now had his own work to do. He located to Austin. He penned, recorded, and released the first album, Whiskey Priest, based on the main character in a Graham Greene novel. He's released 3 more, including the acclaimed 2019 Amateur Theater. He's married to the lovely HalleyAnna Finlay and has dedicated his energy to Soldier Songs and Voices, a nonprofit that promotes healing through music with veterans. It's my super pleasure to welcome to my show my New Year's Eve ride or die, Mr. Dustin Welch.
Oh, right on. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here. What are we going to kick off with?
I'll show y'all a song called Cannonball Girl, which I wrote with one of my biggest songwriting heroes, a fellow named Mark Germino.
Right.
Cannonball girl, let's get lit. Shoot red flames from your fingertips. Turn our backs on what's counterfeit and burn up the midnight trail. Let's wear our hearts like a pawn shop prize. Fight our way through 1,000 lies. Check our sins into South Van Nuys and ride on the dragon's tail. The black cane, like lousy cocaine. Oh, it's a shitting us thin. Ooh, raise the black blinds, yeah, hang the wind chimes, and let the sun shine in. A cannonball girl, let's drop a little rank. Hit the AWOL fence in the New Blood Bank. Find us a truck we can one-arm crank and travel to another time zone. Let's keep the good faith and share all the load and run a 20 mule team down a cinder block road. Cut the first stripes on the last barcode and skip across the great unknown. Ooh, kill the footlights. I'm shedding my skin. Ooh, let's cancel this war. Go and open that door and let the sun shine in. let's cut the middleman, back our way out and blow this popsicle stand. Get out of the fire into the frying pan and strike while the iron's hot. Let's call it in the air, either X or Y. Kiss 'em all good night, kiss 'em all goodbye. Or write our names across the big blue sky and wreck the whole parking lot. Ooh, sound the alarm. Yeah, throw down those arms. I'm alive again. Ooh, sing the refrain. Cut the bolt from the chain and let the sun shine in. Ooh, sing the refrain. Cut the bolt from the chain and let the sun shine in. Cannonball girl, let's get lit. Cannonball girl, let's get lit. Cannonball girl, let's get lit.
Oh, that fired me up. I love that song. That's on the amateur theater, but you played that hard just now.
Yes, sir. Well, that song needs to be fired up. Yeah. I got thinking about the gal they shoot out of the cannon, one day, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to find me one of them. But I better have me a song first. And lo and behold, I think I might actually have found that woman indeed.
When I was writing your bio, you and I talked like 3 or 4 times, it seemed like, and we always have these great late night talks, and I do that for fun. And I probably was halfway doing it for fun because I wasn't taking good notes. And so when I was trying to really get it together, I was like, boy, I need some information. And I went to your website and I read that bio. And I was like, this is the best bio I've ever read. It's so literary. It's crazy good. I don't even know if it's true. I got to double check and make sure because it seemed so outrageous, the story. And then you told me your father actually wrote that. And I said, well, I'm going to co-write this with your father then. And I used a lot of passages from that in that intro. Thank you, Kevin, for lending me that. So,
yeah, that's good to acknowledge his contribution to that in my life in general.
Right.
I just asked him, I was like, hey, you mind writing me a bio? And he sent me that as a first draft, and it was really the whole thing. It's several paragraphs long.
Yeah.
And I was going, wait, but you left out this and you left out that, and there's a lot more, that you could have touched on, but not you.
No, I get what you're saying.
When he wrote it initially, and I was like, wow, well, okay, this does read kind of like some kind of weird other. It was almost mythology like sort of thing. Yeah. I don't know, but that's actually how that went down. Both my folks they grew up in Oklahoma. My mother's from Tulsa, and my father was from Midwest City, and I think they were 22 years old when they moved to Nashville. Or I think my dad actually he came down to Nashville trying to kind of lay the groundwork, meaning sleeping on the ground. And eating
indoors somewhere, I hope.
Tuna out of a tin can, and stuff. And and then shortly after, my mother followed, and that haunted plantation house. That's where they were living when I was born. We were both me and my 2 younger sisters. We were all born at home, and that was out in Franklin, Tennessee, and it was full blown Civil War plantation, haunted as all get out, according to them. we weren't there kind of long enough for me to really remember it. But
so you don't have any bad wounds that you got spooked out.
No, but I guarantee you that had a lot to do with some of the formative reasons why I am the way I am.
Yeah, I think it works like that for sure. And the Osage Tribe.
So that's all of my mother's side of the family are Osage Indian, and so we grew up going to the dances most years up in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, and although I mean we were allowed to go to church if we wanted, there was a lot of it was more kind of the sort of native teachings that we sort of adopted into our family. I built my first sweat lodge at the age of 8.
Wow.
Or 7 or something. I want to say somewhere in there.
So you're connecting to the roots of your mother's side and having the Osage traditions.
Yeah.
By building sweat lodge, you connected a lot to that.
Very fortunate for all that. And then the education that I got growing up in Nashville, all the, like you said, everybody we knew they were in the music business somehow, whether they were songwriters or session players or producers or publishers or any number of those things.
Right, and you mow their lawns and stuff. And,
oh yeah, yeah.
And it sort of then right away the kid bands start forming.
The first band that I had. There was this gal that lived about half a block away from us, whose name is Carrie Ann Hurst, and Carrie Ann is now one half of the duo Shovels and Rope.
Right.
If you're familiar with them, and it was interesting because actually, I mean, even though her stepdad was a great mandolin picker and all that, they were kind of like the only family that we knew that Doug wasn't necessarily a professional musician, but I'd go rollerblading in front of. They lived on this beautiful house on the corner, and there would be Carrie Ann out there playing on her front porch, and I'd just go rolling by, and it was like, wow, okay. But
what a cool way to grow up.
And another fella in the neighborhood is a guy named Corey Yantz, who now is a part of the Old Crow Medicine Show. And he continued on playing in the band with me and Justin as well.
Okay, the Swindlers.
That was, once we sent Carrie off to college, me and Corey were looking for something else. And it was him and Travis Nicholson, the son of another great amazing songwriter in Nashville, Gary Nicholson. And so Travis and Corey and me started this little band called the Swindlers. And those guys were also kind of going to college around that time. And then we came across Justin. And in those days, I was living in this, it was the back house. It was a studio that had been built in the backyard of the house that my mother and sisters and me had moved into, and they turned me over to, we're just going to let you and your buddies just take over this place. It was called the Chickenshack.
Oh yeah.
And so we just got all of our all the instruments we could stack into this place, all our parents' old record collections, had a bunch of really actually pretty nice recording equipment. And so that became sort of the hotbed of where a lot of it was in those days. It was kind of when they didn't have a name for Americana music yet, but a lot of the folks that came through the shack sort of went on to sort of dictate what that turned into, and it was also in that same amount of time. My father and Kieran Kane and Fats Kaplan and Mike Henderson, all these really kind of primo Nashville writers and players. They started one of the first independent labels in Nashville.
That's right.
Right at the same time that John Prine and his brother started Oh Boy. But these guys, they all kind of got this little cool collective going on called Dead Reckoning Records. And it
Nice.
And it kind of freaked everybody out because they could make the records that they wanted to, you know? So next thing it was like, well, let's make a record on David only. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, any number of these all their buddies, you know, they were just...
So no one was doing that in Nashville at the time. They were really sort of following the Nashville rules, and these guys sort of...
In a lot of ways. I mean, there was, you know, in the late 80s, there was what they called the Great Credibility Scare, which was when they gave folks like Steve Earle and Nancy Griffith record deals, and that was like, oh, what did we just unleash, almost, in that kind of way? And
Great credibility.
The Great Credibility Scare.
Wow.
That's actually what it came to be known as. And
That's bizarre.
so, you know, like that was such a, you know, launching from that point. What an incredible education. And
yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I dropped out of high school in like the second month of sophomore year. I was studying jazz band. I was playing guitar in this. It was an incredible school, really prestigious place downtown Nashville called Hume Fogg. And but me and the music teacher just didn't get along at all. And finally one day, I just had to bag it, basically, and walked out of his class.
I've done that before. It's a powerful thing to do.
And I mean, I was a little arrogant.
It's all right.
But it then allowed me to, and I ended up homeschooling out. I got me a full-blown high school degree and all that. But it allowed me to then go and start working at these publishing companies. And,
yeah, right on.
And then a couple years after that.
So like at 16?
I was 14, I think, when I walked out of there. But, you know, had already started playing, you know, little gigs around town with that band with Carrie Ann and Corey but then was picking up jobs at the, you know, like at the tape room at the publishing company.
What's the tape room like? What were you doing there? Organizing tapes?
Well, okay, so working for a publishing company, you're going to write a song, you send it downstairs to the session guys, they're going to record the song, and then they're going to pitch it. Mm-hmm. And so the tape room would be like, okay, you get word come down, we need these particular songs on, you know, one tape. Mm-hmm. We were still even working on tapes, not even CDs at that point. And so you'd have to sit there and copy these demos and then print out the lyric sheet, give it to the runner that's going to go down the road, you know, on 16th Avenue, 17th Avenue, and Music Row. And,
it's a pretty big machine.
And then they're going to come in, they're going to give this to, because you would get a pitch sheet every week. This is so-and-so's cutting these songs this week. You know, they're looking for up-tempo love song, you know. Okay, so let's just get all the up-tempo love songs together, and they would take it down.
So you really got an inside seat of how the whole thing worked from that point.
That was one of those instances,
right.
Yeah. A couple years after that, I started washing dishes at the Bluebird Cafe.
It's a thing to do.
That was, I think I was about 16 then. And you had pretty much, you know, everybody that was writing the hits, you know, either in that day or had been, you know, really, you know, kind of the strongest writers in town.
Right.
And they were all guys, and women as well, that I grew up around. And so they're like, oh, isn't that cute? Dustin's back there washing dishes. I ended up becoming the kitchen manager there, started running sound, you know, on and on. So that was going on all in those days. Also, when we were pulling that band together with Justin, it was really kind of we were just such students of everything, and working in the Chickenshack, we might have been listening to the Mississippi Sheiks or the Memphis Jug Band, but just as much as we were listening to Irving Berlin or Hoagie Carmichael or Gershwin or
Sure.
like all the guys from the Brill Building and because we had such respect and admiration for the people that were actually writing the songs.
Yes.
And Tin Pan Alley and. But also, as much for the session players, the wrecking crew, and I mean, the Stax records. We were really able to just kind of surround ourselves with this is how people actually make a living at this, and treating it like just any other job.
Right.
And so growing up, I would. There'd be John Prine in our kitchen telling me fart jokes, and
oh my gosh, that blows me away.
But I couldn't separate that.
Sure.
Because this is just what they do for a living.
Right. And you didn't know any different anyway.
No, this is their job.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating way to grow up, but we didn't even let it stop there. We were going in and studying. Like Nuevo Tango and Cuban music and ska and reggae and
every single type of music. You guys were like, we want to absorb it and that's what Chickenshack is, kind of. Right?
But then and boiling it all down to like, okay, well, here's the Harry Smith Folk Anthology, here's the Carl Sandburg American Song Bag. Like you could see where all the roots of everything came from.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, my folks were from Oklahoma, so there's a real rich history there. Not just in country music and jazz as well, and big band, and on and on. So
right. Well, the tradition of American music is so cool, and I just saw this documentary called Rumble. Have you seen it? And that was really eye-opening for me.
The Native Americans.
Yeah, and how they were like, if you listen to blues, you could,
They got something else going on also. There's a little added extra element that somehow is just fearless. And I think that maybe, then I got hired by this punk rock band, which I knew nothing about punk rock. I had no idea what that even meant. And so that blew my mind.
I want to get into that, but I want to do a second song first, and then I want to talk about that punk experience.
All right, so this is a song called Poorhouse. Orphan child ain't got no one to love. Angels crying heaven above. Hell's bells and buckets of blood. Well, the shovels break my cold hard ground. You ain't never heard such a lonesome sound. Pray tell me, Lord, what have they found? When his mom is singing sweet and low, she tells the bitter winds to blow. And I know I'll always be alone. Oh, 'cause every night I go to town and blowing pound for pound. Yeah, come on, pass that bottle round. Oh, we're bound to bring the Paul house down. Into this wicked world, she's cast, paying for someone else's past. Oh, I won't lie if you don't ask. In the distance, there's a rumbling train, the whistle wailing to the rain. Just give me whiskey for my pain. It sends shivers up the devil's spine. The moon is shining through the pines like pennies from a dead man's eyes. Oh, 'cause every night I go to town, blowing pound for pound. Yeah, come on, pass that bottle round. Oh, we're bound to break bring the Paul house down. Up the devil's spine, the moon is shining through the pines like pennies from a dead man's eyes. Oh, 'cause every night I go to town, book blowing pound for pound. Yeah, come on, pass that bottle round. Oh, we bound to bring the Paul house down.
What? I could totally see that in a punk song. That song has so much energy. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, let's get. You were always the guitar player, the side man, and that when you got in that punk band, you started to get up. You had these grueling tours.
Well, just being able to get in front of a type of audience that I had never really encountered. Like the very first gig that we did, we got in a van in L.A. Where they had flown me out to come rehearse or audition.
Oh, right.
But that meant, no, you're already in the band. 2 days from now, we're going to drive straight to Madison, Wisconsin. So it's 40 hours in a van. And I got to that gig. And
get to know you.
And they, yeah, I got to know them real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And they had me get up on stage. And all of a sudden, there all these people in the audience were like, jumping around and shoving into each other and push, and I was like, "What are they doing? Like, did we piss them off somehow? What did I do wrong? Like, they must not like me." And I had never seen a mosh pit. Okay, so
that's hilarious.
So yeah, and then by the end of that tour, I was standing on top of a monitor with my tongue hanging out. Like.
That's brilliant.
It was really mind blowing, and got turned on to folks like Joe Strummer. But at that point, I managed to get back to Nashville, and kind of started looking around and going, you know what? I think it's time to move to Texas.
Nice.
We grew up. I mean, coming out to the Kerrville Folk Festival and coming South by and all that. Like we weren't strangers to the Austin music scene. And really most of the best songwriters that we were around were from Texas anyway.
That's interesting.
Steve Earle and Guy Clark and Gary Nicholson.
And that also falls in line kind of with like what your dad did in the beginning too, right?
That was the Nashville school I came up in, and always collaboration, right? Like the idea of actually just sitting down and writing a song all by myself was totally foreign to me because that was just the Nashville school,
right?
And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm used to doing writers' nights, but had never had any desire to front my own band, but within. Immediately folks were like, man, these songs you need to put a band together. And so I looked around this place, Momo's, which I miss dearly.
Yeah, we all miss Momo.
I looked around and I was like, well, the door guy that just moved here from New York is a great drummer. The other sound guy, he's a great bass player. His sweetheart is a great fiddle player. The guy behind the bar is that was Drew Smith.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, hey, y'all want to be in a band? And so it was like, then every week,
that's right,
the employees got to take over the stage. And I mean, I also should mention that all this time, even during the Scotch Greens days, any chance that we would get, me and my father would go out perform together.
Oh, yeah, that's important for sure.
And after a number of years, we kind of both were looking at each other going, this is kind of our favorite thing we get to do together. Probably 8 solid years, we were able to travel the world, just the two of us.
Wow, that's priceless.
Having that family dynamic has been one of the most spectacular things that I could ever be grateful for. Even though we are fairly different musicians and songwriters, or we were initially like slowly, like we kind of started sounding more and more like each other too.
Sure.
The more we were playing.
Your family history that you got this Osage Tribe and Princess and like all this this depth of America that y'all were born into, and you took it to music, and you honored the traditions and you put it in your music, and it's such a gift that we have people that can carry on traditions like that.
And that's what I guess. Yeah, going back into saying that there were all these folks that took me under their wing when I first showed up here, because they were able to identify, like, we got to carry on these traditions.
Absolutely. So we got a little bit more. So we got two sort of main things to cover. One of them is the soldier songs and voices.
A lot of great musicians involved in that project, and so I would get done with a gig, and I would end up with talking with one or several veterans.
Yes.
Going, I've always wanted to learn how to play an instrument or write a song. Mm-hmm. And after hearing this enough, and also kind of touring around the country and playing, I heard that over and over. And so finally I just went, well, we can make that happen. And so I put together a couple benefit gigs, went out and bought a bunch of guitars, and I went down to the Cheatham Street warehouse because I decided I wanted to hold these programs. I wanted them to be like a weekly thing. It needed to be something sustainable. Mm-hmm. And I was going, like, let's try and find some way to localize this, mm-hmm. and let's do this in some kind of more neutral territory where it's not a VFW or a Legion Hall. Like, really, the coolest thing would be to do it in a music venue.
Yeah.
And who do I know around here that would get this? And the first person that came to mind was HalleyAnna's father, Kent Finley. Mm-hmm. And so I just brought a bunch of guitars in, and I said, hey, just putting the word out to the veteran community. I'm going to be here every single Monday with a bunch of guitars. If anybody wants to come and learn how to play a song or write a song or anything, I got a guitar waiting for you. And then it just it spread around the country. And so at any given time, we've got about 15 programs going.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, that's been going on, I guess, about 12 years now, every week. And so during the pandemic, what was really interesting is that I went, well, we can't meet in person, so there's this cool thing called Zoom.
Yeah.
And then what happened was that all of our chapters all over the country, they could all join in together.
That's amazing that the Zoom and the code actually united it, because people were stuck inside, and it's like, oh, wait, now we can communicate. Like, we could do this all the time, whether COVID's happening or not. Music is healing.
Music's a healer. And that wasn't necessarily I didn't understand quite as much of that when this group, when the organization first started going. I was just like, wouldn't it be cool to just give them a guitar and say, hey, here's how to write a song. But pretty quick, man, we figured out, like, oh, there's something else going on here.
That's really cool.
Well, we just had our 7th annual week-long songwriting retreat. We call it the Reveille Retreat, the awakening.
Yeah.
And at this beautiful cattle ranch down in Hallettsville, just south of Schulenburg. 20, 25 veterans, put them up, feed them real good all week long, set up a mobile recording studio, and then bring in some, ringer songwriters. Goodness, I mean, it's unbelievable. I've had the opportunity to meet some of the most remarkable people I never would have gotten to know otherwise.
Absolutely.
And wow, some of these songs.
I bet.
Yeah,
exactly. It's just such a gift that you get to give to, and to think that it grew the way it did is, I mean, that's really like
grassroots.
Thanks, Dustin.
Completely organic.
We really got to close, but we didn't even get to. I'm gonna just real quick, because I did it for HalleyAnna, and I said, How did you guys meet? And I'm going to ask Dustin, too.
We don't really know, actually. I'm guessing 10 years before we actually even started dating.
Right.
That we had met. We were very familiar. I had known her sister even in Nashville, and then I met her father, and then I met her brother, and then finally met HalleyAnna. But yeah, it was something where I had really admired, their family for a long time, and especially her songwriting.
Yeah,
well.
man. Yeah, exactly. Well, you two are great. Let's close it out with one more.
Oh gosh. I ride behind two horses side by side. They both profess to be my only guide. Well, each one's fast and sure afoot they race. And when one takes off, the other keeps the pace. Oh, I ride behind two horses side by side. The young one tries to lead me with his pride. Oh, while the older horse, whose pride was lost in youth, that tries to lead me down the righteous path of truth. Both those faithful horses have their whims. They are born with strengths and weaknesses that blend. I used to ride them both alone most everywhere. But it takes both horses now to get me there. Oh, I ride behind two horses, swift and strong. The first horse tries to break loose on his own, to leave the beaten path he calls a jail, while the other horse prefers to keep the trail. I ride behind two horses jointly bound. Both are always fed and watered down. Now I talk to them and keep them pointed south. And I never shove a cold bit in their mouth. But both those splendid horses lose their breath. Should one horse run the other horse to death, they lead me to the river when I am lost. And it takes both horses now to get across. I ride behind two horses pulling slow. They are harnessed, but they're always in control. And should I ask them both to pick up speed, oh, they prepare themselves in tandem to stampede. Oh, well, Lord, you know them well. will try to understand them like I do you. For they were born inside a stable too. I will try to understand them like I do you. They were born inside a stable too.
Wow was only all I can say.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you.
Wow. That was, man. Thank you so much for coming down, brother.
Well, y'all are doing just extraordinary things, and thank you for everything that you're doing, and then all the rest of the crew and the team here, and everybody that has been participating in this. It's a really inspiring thing.
No, and actually, and a very, very quick last thank you to Bruce Craig and Jen Craig, who, you know, this is their baby. They let us do this, and we are just so grateful to y'all. And thank you. And I hope you're having a happy New Year, everybody. See you next year.